Hello and welcome to the tutorial on Provision ISR's Ipc Manager software. The installation file can be downloaded from the Provision ISR website. Just type in Google, IP Manager Provision, and open the website. Click on Download of the latest version, and wait until the RAR file is downloaded to the computer. Find the file in the Downloads folder, and extract it with the WinRAR software. In the uncompressed folder, there are two versions of the software. Let's unRAR the file of the Windows operating system. In this folder, there are two important files. The first one allows the software to display the video from the network cameras. Let's install it. And the second one is the software itself. Let's install it too. As you can see, the software has started, and it immediately shows all provision equipment it found in the local network. The current version is 1.0.7.16. For the sake of explanation, we will disconnect from the network with a lot of equipment, and we will work with only one camera, which is connected to the router, together with our computer. There are two ways to set the IP address of the camera. The first one is to receive the IP address automatically from the router, using the DHCP protocol. This is not the recommended way for the scenario, in which the camera transmits video to the NVR. The second option is to set manually the static IP address for the camera, so that the NVR will always refer to the same IP address to receive a video transmission. Provision camera, configured by default, with DHCP enabled. If the camera does not receive an IP address from the router, it sets the next default IP address for itself. If our cameras are connected to the NVR on the network, it is recommended not to leave the camera with the DHCP setting, because every time the router is going to be reset, the address of the camera will change, and it will disconnect from the NVR. Therefore, it is advisable to occupy a scope of permanent IP addresses, for the CCTV cameras and the NVR, that will be far from the IP addresses that the router assigns to devices, such as computers and smartphones. For example, if our router IP address is ending with 1, and it assigns IP addresses to all the computers and smartphones in the vicinity of this number, it is preferable to set all our cameras with the IP addresses that are far from this scope. For example, we will assign the NVR an IP address that ends with 100, and for the cameras, we will assign an IP address that ends with 101 for the first camera, an increasing address for the other cameras. In this video, we will demonstrate a scenario in which both our computer and the camera are connected to the router. Now, let's connect the camera, which we took out of the box for the first time, to the power supply and to the network cable. Before we start, we must avoid the problems accessing IP cameras, so make sure we use the All setting, so that we can scan the network through all the network cards of our computer. While the camera is booting up, we should get familiar with the refresh button. It is very useful, because it causes the software to scan the network every fixed period of time, without our intervention. The camera is on, and now it is displayed in the cameras list. Please note, the camera received an IP address from the router, ending with 110. Just for the sake of demonstration of another function later on, we will manually set the network address of our computer, instead of letting it also receiving a DHCP address from the router. To do it, we will go into the network settings of the computer, and set an IP address near to the address received by the camera. We will return to the changing the IP address of the camera shortly, but before that, let's activate the camera itself. The camera is in non-active state, while it is in a default factory configuration, which means that it does not have a password. To activate it, we will go to the Activate tab, and write down the password, which will be used by the most powerful user, called admin. For example, I am entering the password, admin123 Enter the same password, also in the confirmation field. Please note, I chose this password, because Provision's high level of security requires a password, which will be at least 8 characters long, consisting of English letters, with at least one of them a capital letter, numbers, and a special sign such as a tilde, with which I ended the password. Please note, the initial activation, or any other change in camera configuration, we can perform as batch, for several cameras that are displayed in the list. During the execution of this command, the camera will ask to provide some answers to the security questions. These answers will be used later, in case we will forget the password we just set, and we would need to set a new password. For example, I will answer all the questions with the same answer, but it is advisable that everyone gets used to giving their own code word, in English letters or digits. Of course, it is recommended to use some code word which is not going to be something too easy to guess. Please note, the command passed successfully, and the status changed to active. Big convenience of this software is the ability to see the real-time video from the camera we have chosen from the list. The only problem is that the Ipc Manager software cannot display the video from the camera without providing the software with the password needed to communicate and control the selected camera. In this field that we can call from now on the key, we will enter the password. From now on, every time the software will try to execute any command on one or more devices in the list, it will use this password to execute it. Here, we define the password of the admin user. This is the password we just set a moment ago, when we activated the camera last time. As soon as I entered the password, the software succeeded in executing a command to display a video in the window. Now, let's try to change the IP address of the camera. Let's try to change the address in the Batch Set Net tab. The two IP address fields here are intended for the situation when we batch change the IP address of several cameras. The problem can occur if the software detects that one of the IP addresses in between these two numbers is occupied. In such a case, that command would fail and we will get warning. In our case, it happened because our computer IP address is occupying one of those addresses. When we change the upper limit to the IP address that will not conflict with existing IP address in the network and we execute the command, we can see immediately that the command was executed successfully, and it immediately showed the address change. In the Stream tab, we can set the resolution of the cameras, bandwidth, and other settings. In the Password tab, we can change the password of the admin user, which we set just a moment ago, during the activation process. For the demonstration, we will change the password to admin1234. Basically, we will add one digit. Now, if we see the status column, it seems that the Ipc Manager is no longer able to display the video from the camera. Therefore, we have to update the password again in the key area. As soon as the password was updated, we can immediately see that the camera is accessible again. Other things that we can do from the software is to set image settings in the camera, such as brightness, contrast, and if we check the checkboxes, also the sharpness and the defog parameters. Please notice how the image immediately changes in the display panel. Other useful things that can be done from this tab is enabling the WDR and image rotation if the camera has been installed in a corridor mode. Here, we can mirror and flip the image if the camera was installed in reverse. In the OSD tab, we can change the name of the camera embedded on a video signal. As you can see, once I add some text or delete it, it affects the camera name. Let's change the name back to its original state. And now, let's see how to set the camera name in Hebrew, where letters are written from right to left. For this, we will connect to another network, which has a lot of provision equipment. This time, we will use a filter in the name column to search for a specific camera. We found several cameras here with the same name. Let's choose the camera, where we can see the name change in the clearest way. In the name of the camera, we will write the mirror string of the text we plan to write. As you can see, the camera name embedded on the video is mirror reversed, and now it has some meaning and is readable by the end user. In the software, the camera name will still be displayed in reverse Hebrew, but in the app and on the NVR screen, we will see the name correctly. Let's put the name back to its original state. To see the change, you can refresh the list. Now, let's get back to the network with the single camera and continue learning about the software. The most common thing we do from this software is to open the selected camera web interface, simply by clicking on the desired camera line. Here, we will enter the username admin and password, which we set earlier in the software. Please note that all the changes we make in the IP Manager software are immediately reflected in the web interface, and vice versa. For example, if I raise the brightness to 85, it will be immediately reflected in the web interface. And now, we will cover the last and very useful function of the software: resetting camera to its factory settings. But instead of simply clicking on the command, let's imagine a very frequent situation when we visit a customer and he doesn't know what the camera's password is. To simulate this situation, let's change the password in the key intentionally, so it will not match the camera's password. We were able to execute this command, but from now on, the camera will not accept any other command. Now, when we get to the Restore tab, we will not just click the Restore button, but we will check the checkbox, which says that we don't know what the camera password is. Ipc Manager will allow us to reset the camera to the factory settings, because we are on the same local network. Once we click the Restore button, we will have only 30 seconds to disconnect the power from the camera, and if possible, also the network cable. This operation, we did just now, reset the camera to the factory default settings. During this process, the camera disappears from the software list. After about 5 seconds, we can plug the power and network cable back, and wait for about half a minute. As you can see, the camera is back to the non-activated state again, as it was at the beginning of the video. Thanks for watching.